Greetings and welcome to Act for Life, Living Our Best Life. My name is Nico. I'm a mental health counselor based here in Tokyo and available to clients internationally via my online office. In this series of live streams and recordings, I will be delving deeply into the principles behind ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, and how we can apply those principles to ourselves in order to build the lives that we want. ACT is a highly practical methodology that includes mindfulness practice, meditation, and self-inquiry, driven overall by a sense of curiosity and willingness to change. As this is a relatively new channel, please go through the usual process of liking, subscribing, and leaving a comment, as it seems it does help the algorithm. So, without further ado, let's jump into the matter at hand. As always, open up, be present, and do what matters. And welcome again. That was the pre-programmed stock opening, as it were. It's quite a challenge putting together something which is live and unfiltered to the air. So do bear with me if mistakes are made and all those kinds of things. It's much easier to pre-record something and then edit out any blips and bloopers. But this is what it is. Okay, so today we're going to be focusing on identifying our personal values, where values act as signposts along the way rather than goals to be arrived at. There's a big difference there. But before we start, let's begin with a calm mind. If you've done any Vipassana courses with the Goenka community, there's always the recording of Goenkaji saying, begin again, start with a calm mind. Something like that. But it is very true, isn't it, when we're approaching some learning or interacting with a new and interesting source, then it's better to approach these things with a calm and open mind and seeing what arrives out of that state. You could almost say, too, that the calm mind is the beginning of the meditative mind. So if you're familiar with the practice of meditation, maybe when you first start, you are battling an overactive mind. And as you go deeper into the meditation and into the meditation practice, you find more and more that the calm mind arises more readily. So that could be one of the main benefits of actually engaging in a meditative practice. But let's start off with a little activity which is helpful in various instances. It's called box breathing. And from the little GIF you see before you, it's pretty self-explanatory, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, and then repeat the process. Once you're used to this format, it's quite easy to extend the time needed, maybe to 5 seconds, 6, 7, 8. Or what I do is I extend the out breath to 8 seconds. Whatever you do, in a sense, to make this your own, it works readily to calm the mind, especially if the mind has been tricked into anxiety or overactivity or catastrophizing or ruminations, all those kinds of things. It can also be a technique that you use during meditation to calm the mind even further. So do try this by yourself and come back to this GIF if you need to, just to remind you how to do that. A very useful technique for bringing us into the present moment in a mindful manner. Okay, let's go on to today's content. And here we see before us a picture of a path winding into a misty, distant horizon. The path immediately in front of us is clear, and we can see where our feet would land, maybe for the next 100 meters or so. And this can be a metaphor for the life that we lead. We can have all kinds of ideas and plans in place for today, tomorrow, next week, and so on. But the further out our plans take place, the less clarity there is. Simply because life throws us various challenges that we need to overcome and face. And there must be a way of making those challenges less overpowering. And ACT proposes that we can help clarify our paths by designing our lives according to the core values that we can discover in our beings. So as I said before, values aren't goals, they are actually signposts that help us steer us towards various goals. This is another metaphor. ACT, by the way, loves metaphors, as you'll find out. So here we have a picture of a person afloat on a boat in the ocean. An expansive ocean. It is a clear day, nothing much happening. And it seems rather peaceful, doesn't it? But we can say, well, have we ever felt in a situation where we are adrift? Things are okay, but deep down something is off. Maybe we've just had the promotion that we thought was going to be right for us. And as we begin this job, this new situation, it seems okay, but it's not really what we wanted. There's something missing. Or perhaps you think you're in the right relationship, but it's not really going anywhere, whether that's a emotional relationship or a friendship or something like that. It still doesn't seem like there's any direction there. There's no development. So that's usually a signal that your choices or your values aren't lining up with what you want in life. If we look deeper into this image here, we see a couple of what look like distant ships on the horizon there. There could be a couple of islands. But whatever, they seem attractive to the figure sitting in a boat looking at the distance there. But the problem is, as we look at this image deeper, is that this person has absolutely no way of propelling themselves to that distant horizon. There's no sail, there's no motor, there aren't even any oars to propel themselves forward. And also, interestingly, this person isn't wearing a life jacket. So at the moment, the person afloat on the boat on the ocean is just bobbing along, and they have opened themselves to the vagaries of weather and current. They can be pushed one way or the other according to where the current flows. And if some storm arises, they can be caught in the middle of the storm without an option to steer away from it. And the fact that they don't have a life jacket seems to indicate that they could be in for a spot of bother, as it were. So even though the object, the desire, might be on the horizon there's no way of getting there. So let's come back to that in a while. This image here of the iceberg represents ourselves. And we know that the larger icebergs that we see, they only show us the small percentage above water, maybe 10% of the whole structure. And this iceberg image is of one of ourselves that we project out into the world. The top part of the iceberg is what other people see, what other people interact with, what we project in our communities as being ourselves, that carefully constructed sense of I. The teacher, the lawyer, the doctor, the mother, the wife, whatever it is, we all have so many different roles that we play. And the playing part is quite crucial in this moment, because underneath the surface of the water is where we keep our identities, ourselves, that we do not want the outside world to see. We do not want other people to know that we're anxious, or that we have self-doubt, or that we lack confidence, or that we're always second-guessing ourselves. We don't want to seem weak or needy or those kinds of things that we look at other people and say, oh, yes, all right, yes, you're a bit of a drama queen, aren't you? Yeah? So we want to, you can be drama queen, but, control it, why don't you? Sorry, that relates to quite a conversation I was having with my wife this morning about somebody else, of course. But anyway, with ACT, what we're doing is we want to find out about ourselves and how we tick, and how or what we find hidden in ourselves, because that really is often a surprise. We may not know that the reasons for our behavior relate to our experiences in the past, or how we grow up in different situations and things like that. All these hidden forces come together to create this persona that we're projecting in this present moment. So, when we look at values, as I say, maybe this is the third time, but values are signposts. Signposts. So when we have lost our way, or when we're looking to find our way, if we refer back to the values that we've identified for ourselves, we kind of give ourselves a North Star. So the North Star in the Northern Hemisphere acts as a point of direction. So we can look at the North Star and say, okay, this is pointing us north. And in a way, when we are walking on a valued path, if we go back to our values to give us those directions, that's how they work for us. So why values matter? Once we've identified our values, we can align our choices with those values. For example, if we want to lead a healthy lifestyle and we are engaged in smoking a cigarette, or even before we engage in smoking a cigarette, we can have that cigarette in our hands and say, well, okay, now is this in line with my value of promoting health in my being? And, the obvious answer is no. So the action following the recognition of that would be to put aside the cigarette, and maybe the result might be a decrease eventually and an eventual stopping of smoking. Maybe not such a good example, but you can see how that works anyway. So where are we? There we go. So values matter because they dictate our actions, they shape our priorities, and they influence the state of mind. So it's very much a cyclic approach that we're engaged in. Again, it's a signpost that keeps us on the track that we want to be on. Things that we've identified are important for ourselves. So here's a archaeologist digging away at the site. And this is very much the road we have before us when we identify our values as a basis for the beginning of this journey. When an archaeologist digs down into the past, they first of all have to uncover the site and dig down through various strata. And for us, those strata are exemplified by things like our family, our society, our culture that we've been born into. It's the same for all of us, really, right? We're born into a family. And initially, what's important is that we are accepted into the family as a family member. So as a young child, our priority is to gain attention and approval of the parent, because the parent looks after us. Our lives depend on the support of the parent and the family. So initially, that's what we do. And by the age of 4 or 5, we're sent off to school and our horizons expand a little bit, and then we're preoccupied with being accepted by our classmates, our peer group, and the various challenges that can come up with that environment. And as the environment of school expands to later primary school and junior high school, senior high school, university, things like that, our horizons expand and change. And as we do that, we are changing and expanding ourselves. So it's a process in life where hopefully we become more mature as we manage those challenges and we build a picture of who we think we are. But along with those challenges, again, of course, are the other challenges that we face along the way, and they could be relationship challenges, relationship issues. It may be that we're not getting on well with other members of our peer group. It may be that we are falling into relationships that are repeating the same kind of patterns. It may be that our friendships break up suddenly. And if it happens once or so, you may be able to say, well, it's something I can learn from. But if those patterns are repeated and repeated and repeated, then we begin to think, well, hang on a minute. why is this happening? Yeah. And once we start asking those why questions, we turn introspectively. We become inward looking, starting to look inside for those answers to those questions. And that's where identifying the values can be very, very useful. So the value sort is something I'm going to show you now. We can kind of divide our lives into 4 areas. Our life is pretty complicated, but it helps to regard life in domains, what they call an act. So the domain of relationships, the domain of profession, the domain of leisure, and the domain of spirit. And we can seek what the values are in a particular domain. It may happen, for example, that one value is shared across many domains, and that's great. But for the present moment, let's just focus on the domain of profession and see what comes up when we do a value sort. And this is where I exit stage left to pick up this, which is something I had close at hand, but not immediately so. So anyway, so the domain of profession. And what we do is here we go, there we go. We have a column of yes and a column of no, and we get ourselves these values cards readily available in any local values shop, bookshop, online, whatever you wish to do it. You don't need to shuffle them, but say if no, you don't really need to. I mean, they're not tarot cards, right? Okay. So I've got here a value on this card, inner strength. If that's important, that goes into yes column. If this is important, encouragement, that goes into the yes column. If hope or hope, right pronunciation, is not so important in the domain of profession, it goes into the no column. And spirituality in profession may not be so important so it goes into the no column. Beauty, unless you're a beauty therapist, not really, okay. Courage, ooh, okay. Courage may be important in profession, especially if you want to engage in change and get away from the norm. Norm is quite a nice guy, but this is a different use of norm, right? So anyway, let's see what comes up here. From my previous things, it seems that, let me just change this a little bit. Okay, and transition back to that. So I've made myself smaller in the corner. Huh. Right. So in the yes column, we have challenge, learning, independence, fulfillment, integrity, and connection. There may be more. In the no column, nurture, freedom, structure, safety, beauty. The idea of nurture in my profession as a teacher and counselor, you could debate. But maybe that is kind of covered by connection in a way. So sometimes these values statements are part of a different subset, shall we say that, speaking mathematically. So we may have 15, 16 in the yes column out of our choice of 56 laminated cards. And then what we do is we repeat the process so that we refine our selection so that we end up with 3, 4, or 5. 3 is good, actually. So I've got these 3 identified as some foundational values in my professional life, with the most important, if I were to stagger them, rate them, that's the word. Learning would be the one which kind of stands above all the 2 others. And if I look back at my life, I'm 65 now. So if I look back at the age of, say, 14, when I was a young, shy, pimply youth, the changes that have taken place in that life has certainly been a process of expansion, and expansion through learning, active learning through being engaged in acquiring different qualifications. So I have a whole string of qualifications behind me. Learning in the sense of putting myself in situations where I thought I would never be from a voluntary point of view. So I never thought I would be a primary school teacher, for example. And yet that is the profession that I loved the most, just because there was so much learning taking place there. And if you are a primary school teacher at the moment, it's more power to you. It was the right career choice for me. And before that, I tried various different career paths, and I was very much like the guy afloat in a boat on the ocean, thinking, okay, here I am, but now what, right? So it wasn't until I went to Teachers College in New Zealand, and then arrived at my first teaching destination, that really things started to change for me. So I'm so glad about that. And that path eventually led to Japan and all the things that have happened here. So learning is fundamental, and it continues. So at the moment, I'm learning how to do these live streams and project that into the ether, as it were. Connection and integrity are very important, both in the field of education and the field of counseling that I've found myself into more recently. Without integrity, well, where are we, right? We value people that connect in an authentic manner. So at least I do. And so much happens in counseling when the client comes to you and reveals their deepest fears, their deepest problems in such an authentic manner that we cannot but respect that and value that ourselves. So I have the deepest respect for clients who are able to do that from their own volition. So, as you can see, with identifying some of those values, that what we're doing is creating a life that we are actually designing. We're designing our way forward by aligning ourselves with our values. So values work as decision filters, career alignment, signposts, relationships, and daily habits, and so on. These are things that we can consider in ourselves, in our lives. And if we're honest with ourselves, are we in line with the values that we know ourselves with? Sometimes it gets a bit tricky, though. There could be a little bit of a incongruency between what's happening in our career and what's happening in our relationships. For example, in the family relationships, we may have young children to look after. And as parents, what we want to do is provide an environment which is safe and secure and supports their growth as they become older. So if we are in a career which doesn't seem to give us much in the way of excitement or direction or expansion, but it gives us a monthly income, then we would be less than bright to give up our jobs and selfishly disregard the cornerstone relationships that we find so important in different times, in different domains. So you see, but what we can do if we go back to career and say, well, I'm lacking fulfillment in this career, then if we change the perspective and say, well, rather than thinking I'm stuck here, what can I do to help my next best career move? Or can I engage in further learning, maybe not necessarily linked to my current career, but something that expands my area of interest? So case comes to mind exactly of that, where a friend of mine was stuck in a job that he was not happy in, a fellow teacher. And his family relationships required him to provide the income. So he did exactly that. He posed himself the question, well, what can I work on to give my future prospects a bit more oomph? And he engaged in further studies in the international baccalaureate system and did those various courses that helped him eventually to get a different job. So it took a while. Sometimes these things don't happen overnight. It could be 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year plan. But again, if you are in line with your values, if you are thinking this will get me somewhere in the future, then it's worthwhile to engage in those activities. One thing to consider about values is your legacy. Now, you may think, well, all right, values are okay, but what do they have to do with legacy? It's not just about today, they're about the story of your life. So what is the story of your life going to be in the long run? So the choices that we make every day are laying the bricks of your legacy, right? So when people talk about you years from now, what values will they see woven through your life? It may not be so important to you, but certainly personally, I feel I want to be remembered somehow by the next generation or generation after. So working on legacy through valued action is an important point. Something that you may like to try is imagine 20 years from now what your life is going to be like in 20 years from now. So I'm 65. In 20 years, I'll be 85. Statistically, I know that perhaps I'll be lucky to live to 85, but um, what does that life look like at that time? If I'm saying at 85, I want to be physically independent, mentally healthy, and living a well-connected life, then what I'm doing now is working towards that. Yeah. If I'm younger, in my 20s, and asking myself that question, what is my life going to look like in 20 years' time? And we've gone to the point of identifying our values. The question could be, what will my life look like in 20 years' time if I keep using these values as my signposts? And if you can envisage what's happening around you, in which environment you are, how you're connecting with people, how you're interacting with your close loved ones, and so on, then that again acts as a magnet that draws you towards that. Yeah. So it's a very good question to ask yourselves, what will my life be like at 40, at 50, at 60, and so on, as we go through living our lives step by step. So what we're actually doing when we live in alignment with values is we stop drifting, we stop being the person in the boat on the ocean, and we start designing actually what we want. And very much like an architect, the plan is not the reality, right? What is that saying? The map is not the territory. So we may find things on our design which, after a while, don't really apply. And we might have to redraw and resketch and reevaluate. But that's part of the process. That's part of the journey. So we're not actually aiming to arrive anywhere. We're designing the path so that we have a more aligned process in place. So we may end up with our lives like this, looking great. I'm not sure what this represents, but I guess there are stepping stones along the way, bubbles of imagination, an island with luscious green and the beginnings of a forest, and so on. Not sure what your vision of your future looks like. So just before we end today's presentation, other places that you can find my work. Well, you can go to tokyocounselor.com and check out my website there. On it, you will find a link to counseling if you wish to engage in counseling in various ways. There is also a link to my work on Insight Timer. And if you don't know about Insight Timer, it's a place where various teachers present their work either for free or for a small fee. Meditations, guided meditations, talks, helping your inner life, I think, is the main practice or the main theme of Insight Timer. Encouraging people to go within and seek peace of mind, as well as finding community. And of course, then here's Act for Life, the YouTube channel. So on Insight Timer, you will find various Yoga Nidra recordings that I've done. And I really do encourage you to try Yoga Nidra for yourself. Again, there are various teachers and courses available there, but if you want to release deeper trauma and anxieties and do so in a environment where you feel safe and secure, then Yoga Nidra is very much an option that you can try for yourself. Okay, so that's it from me there. Let me transition back to this camera here. And that's the full view. Okay. I have absolutely no idea how long this has taken. Oh, 40 minutes. 40 minutes. Well, anyway, there's one thing that's missing that I haven't been able to look at, which I hope I will address in the future, is the chat button on the live. So if you've made some comments in chat, or once this goes up as a recording, if you make some comments, as I hope you do, please give me some feedback and maybe comments and even ideas for future videos that you might like to engage in. What I'm planning to do is to go live every Friday at 10 o'clock Japan Standard Time, and eventually do that every week and load up these live streams, maybe slightly edited, to the Act for Life channel. That is the cunning plan. Okay, so thank you for joining, and I hope that I will see you again. Take care.